we can lead the way and we can set an example. And in doing so, we trump the rhetoric of the internet Dawa corporation. We set an example of Dawa that is beautiful and is inspiring and moves people, not in their head, but in their heart. And we can forge families and we can raise children in this Ishq oriented understanding of Islam. And I believe that this is something that will persevere. And indeed, despite my father having an anger streak, he also emphasized the mercifulness of God and lived up to that Fanafi Rasul easygoing example. So Christians do this too, even though they're deifying the Messiah. They do a certain amount of healthy Fanafi Rasul in emulating him as well, mashallah. But ultimately, what cost me my faith in Christianity was the bad example of both Catholics defending the traditions. It's the same thing with like Sunnis doing this. Or even, I've seen plenty of Shia guys who are maybe like pro Assad or they're Khomeinists or whatever. They like Idlib being bombed stuff. I can't support that. I had to unfollow those guys. I don't support that kind of thing. And for me, back in 2004 was the year when I really lost my faith. I was getting there in 2003. I was thinking about memes and the singularity, AI, right, coming. It was a little ahead of schedule, but eventually it did arrive. We'll see how that plays out. Maybe Ishq is the solution there as well, if we can teach Ishq to the AI. And ultimately, the war in Iraq and the hypocrisy of these people and the materialism and the denigration of their duty to the poor was something that ruined Christianity for me. And of course, it's like, well, you become a Muslim, and Islam is substantially worse. I don't know if it's 10 times worse or 3 times worse or 50% worse, but it's definitely more than 20% worse. Okay. it's it's definitely a lot worse. And part of that is due to the historical processes, the stagnancy that insulated the Islamicate from those processes, and the lack of ecumenicism, the rampant sectarianism manifested in creating Muslim refugees and Muslim victims between Muslims, even when we don't have Zionism to blame. They're doing it with Muslims. And the lack of Ishq is overwhelming. And then the dominating anti Dawa of an Ishqless Islam and people responding to criticisms by saying, yes, that's right. We follow divine command theory. We think God is like this. What is good and just is definitionally vis-a-vis divine command theory, and that's what we're on. And we support evil things to you, but it's all relative, man. And that's the position that these guys take. And it's just not something that can be felt by healthy people. There are certainly unhealthy people who convert to Islam for the wrong reasons, like that one guy who joined in the 2000s because he believed in taking down Western civilization. I'm not going to say his name. And so when we contemplate Ishq, when we get up for tahajjud and we make that effort and we make dua to be united with our beneficiaries, we make dua to achieve tremendous transformations, to be radical, not in overturning the social order, but in transforming it in a percolation of love. And it involves giving, it involves investing in these projects that can create room for these people, and investing our time in the renewed dawah. And ultimately, there are three things that I take away from Sufism that I think are a pure distillation of value without any of the things that might make a Quran centric person uncomfortable with, say, Irfani Shiism being fixated on theopathic statements of Imams. You can take those theopathic statements as something to be like a mind twister, not to be taken literally, or you can say, well, maybe those aren't authentic hadith. They wouldn't say that because they're good, pious, Tawhidi people. And likewise, in Sufism, there's a very weird thing that can happen with the Fanafi Sheikh, the spiritual abuse, culty Sufi orders. I'm not going to name any that come to mind, but you can do research on it if you want. And you're going to get involved in that, and it's a little weird. So, what's the value? Plus, there's the classic grave worshiping thing, which is overstated. The fiqh on that is actually they're not worshiping the grave; they just go. It's like you go to the Washington Monument, right? You don't like you don't make it the Qibla when you go visit. You just thought it would be a cool thing to do. Yeah, sure, it's an Egyptian obelisk. There's an occult history to that. Like it's halal to go to the Washington Monument or the Jefferson Memorial and so on. That's not where they're buried, but if it was, it would be the same. I think that gets overplayed, and that's like a soundbite. But still, you want to take the pearls out without having to get the bends diving and dealing with all of the traditional baggage associated with these mystical traditions. So the three things are no mind, fanafi Allah, which I think is something anyone who reads the Quran closely can appreciate, losing yourself in God, and heart meditation. So heart meditation is particularly interesting because no mind is shared by many traditions, Vedantism, Buddhism. Fanafi Allah is shared by other traditions as well. Hesychasm, mystical Christian orthodoxy, contemplative prayer, and contemplative prayer in Catholicism. This was a pivotal moment for me as a child. My father took me down to the river, and we did some contemplative prayer, and it really was moving to me, and it set the pace up for me to receive the Ruhudus through this Sisala of the Catholics, which not everybody who gets confirmation does. And also, I was doing a sort of a Fanafi shake on St. Francis of Assisi, radiallahu anhum, who was not overtly Trinitarian. I mean, he may have been, but he didn't talk about it, and that's the sin. And these contemplative mystical practices got into Catholicism through the influence of the Knights Templar, who were influenced by the Druze, who were influenced by the obviously Ismaili Shiism, who influenced the Sufis, and it's all rooted in the same Wahi. Not to say that the Knights Templar or the Druze and so on are all perfect, or their successors, the Freemasons, and so on. Not at all. Nobody's perfect. Some people are more imperfect than others. But that was an important moment for me. And then the heart meditation is a particularly unique technique amongst the practitioners of Islamic mysticism. And this is where the deeper lessons of the Quran for those who contemplate comes to bear. Because what it does is it has you opening the energy flow in the qalb, or the heart chakra, as the Zoroastrians and Hindus would call it. So the qalb is not just a metaphor, and it's not the physical heart, except that the physical heart is an electrical device that is pulsing electromagnetic fields rhythmically, or maybe if you have an arrhythmia, arrhythmically. But that's still a rhythm. It's just not mathematically even one. And the spiritual dimension of our bodies, which you hear a lot of these new age people talking about, our magnetic field, our aura, the quantum non-local Deepak chakra, hoodoo voodoo self, the jinn within, if you will. So in the way that jinn are these plasmic quantum computing entities made of non-baryonic matter, we are anchored in baryonic matter, but we still have a soul like angels do, and we have a spirit like jinn do. And so the kalb is the nexus of that energy. And when you do zikr and you do the breathing techniques, so for instance, I do this on Juma nights, that's Thursday night, after Isha and the Vitr, the first rakam of my Vitr. And I warm up with a number of them and I do them slowly. Instead of doing a fast repetition of la ilaha illallah, like after salah, I do them slowly and I build up to it and I build up the energy from my belly to my solar plexus to my heart. And then I slowly open my hands and I focus on opening the heart and I begin to have these thoughts wandering of all the people that I can help, and I become more disposed to more charity. And also, when you're in a family, this is important, especially if you're going to be in a big family. You're going to adopt children and so on. And this heart meditation was mentioned by Robert Anton Wilson in his book Prometheus Rising when he was talking about the levels of consciousness associated with the heart and the concept of familiar morality. And this was my first major breadcrumb into Islam way back when. And this was how, and he wasn't even really, obviously he wasn't a Muslim. And he wasn't in a tariqa. He wasn't really initiated, and it was more like a buffet smattering of hippie sampler platter stuff from various Eastern traditions. But there it is. There's something unique here. This is not just a redundant, what you might call bida hasana of taking things out of Buddhism and Vedanta and adding Islamic tropes to them. This is something that comes out of the very heart of the Quran, mashallah. This is the Wahi, and this is the sacred heart of Christ as well. And this is what we are cultivating. And I see so many Muslims on Muslim marriage ready to rip the stop loss out of their young marriages over some beef. And sometimes it's one party. I mean, you never know, you don't get both sides of the story, but sometimes it's like you got to do it. It's just it's not going to work out. The other person is not amenable. But a lot of times it's like, well, it's like instead of investing in a stock, it's like, well, it's down 1% today. Maybe I should sell. That's kind of their attitude. And if they cultivated Ishq, they would be, I think, getting a lot more out of their marriages. And if you're going to even contemplate doing polygamy, a lot of people, a lot of Muslim men will look at it as like just commodifying nikah more. And it's like, no, I mean, if you're going to keep people happy like that, you got to be able to do that with one person. You got to be able to do that with two people and so on, or however many. And if you're going to raise children that are not biologically your own, or even that are biologically your own, and they're going to beat you up maybe when they're two, like we've been dealing with, you need this resource. You can't just, I mean, making dua and it can help, but then if the dua inspires you to do these intermediate and advanced techniques and increase the flow of energy through your heart, through your spiritual heart, it's going to help you to be merciful. And then when you're merciful, you're going to get more mercy, and your akida might not be perfect. You don't think things are sins because you're progressive, and then they turn out to be sins on Judgment Day, like maybe music or something. You listen to music sometimes. You do a few sexual things that are wrong, and kind of repent, but like you're still horny, you know. So it's not you're not like doing a full toba, um, but you're doing all these other good deeds and you're being merciful with people. So this is a technique of increasing ishq, and the ishq is the cherry on top of the ice cream sundae of your deen. The ice cream is the taqwa. The whipped cream and the sprinkles is the shukr, like the gravy, if you will. If you want to go with the savory, there's the meat, the gravy. And then I don't know what the analogy would be in a savory dish, perhaps a truffle, perhaps some shaved truffle would be the ishq. Really just puts it over the top and makes it just something very special and very beautiful. And so, inshallah, I'm going to get back to work. I think my compile just finished. So I can make this money so I can take care of these people. And I think of it that way because I've been cultivating ishq, and I've started praying for ishq. I was making dua that I be increased in zikr, shukr, taqwa. Now I'm adding ishq to the list, and it maybe will take me in interesting places, and inshallah will take you in interesting places as well. Nur alaikum, wassalam, wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.